Now, the youth of Bolong in the Kumbungu district of the Northern region have demonstrated against the poor road network in their area. The youth, numbering about 1,000, marched through the muddy roads, chanting slogans. A petition has also been presented to the Kumbungu District Assembly and copied to the office of the President and the Northern Regional Coordinating Council. The youth have given government a 1-month ultimatum to fix the road or stand the chance of being voted out come December 2016. And in the Volta region, some residents in the whole municipality have embarked on a similar demonstration against government on the deplorable nature of the roads in their communities. The over 500 protesters from the Hojo, Takla and Benoy were up against government's inability to reshape a 15-kilometer stretch of road. The residents expressed anger over the numerous promises made by government to get the roads fixed this year. The group presented a petition to the Municipal Assembly to be forwarded to the President. Right, so tonight we want to explore the issue of development and why politicians tend to succumb to demands few months to the elections. I have with me in the studio Mr. Asar Mohammed, who is a development expert and also lectures at the University of Development Studies. Good evening, sir. Thank you very much for coming.
Steven.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm quite good and praying that things will be better for our community people.
That's right. So these community people, let's make reference to them quickly. They always, well, I'm not saying they always wait to the last wee moment of the election year, but the pressure keeps mounting in election years for things to be done. Is this blackmail or what? Or you would say is a normal governance tactics that people use to get development to their communities?
Yeah, good evening to your listening listeners, and I think it's important that the subject must be discussed at length. The most important thing we have to understand about our communities is that they are becoming discerning.
And discerning means that in the past they were not discerning?
Yeah, communities are now getting to understand that the national development depends
for all.
It's for all. And for that matter, if you come and make a promise, they expect you to come account. And for that matter, if you do not come back to account, they will definitely show you the way. And they know that the vote is their power now. So that is a very interesting development, but at the same time, we need to be very careful about the development.
How careful should we?
Because it can lead to something different.
Something different? Like what?
I mean, they are doing demonstration, others may take it to a different level.
And it could cause violence in an election year.
At the end of the day. I mean, so election
beyond that, you would acknowledge that the communities are becoming discerning, like you said. Discerning. And they deserve the things that will improve their lives.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, the most important thing we have to understand and take seriously in this country is how do we get them involved in the planning and development of their own selves. Because when you go to the assemblies, I've been doing a lot of work with district assemblies in this country, and you get to understand that when it comes to even planning as to what to be provided at community level, you don't get them much involved.
So you've raised a very critical issue that in pursuit of development for the people, you must engage the people for whom these development projects affect.
For sure. So you go to the assemblies and you realize that a lot of plans have been put in place, but the community people are not aware. So sometimes you see that they are demonstrating on a particular development agenda that has already been planned for. Or sometimes they've decided to demonstrate to push the assemblies to do it quicker, because they do not understand the modus operandi of the assemblies. So it's important that the people get involved in the planning, they get also involved in the implementation. In one way or the other, we need to also disseminate information from the assemblies and then the development agents. So for instance, now communities have reduced the whole concept of development to the national level because they see that the assemblies cannot provide. So you can see in this particular case, they have demonstrated to the assembly. Then in the hitherto, they would have been going to demonstrate against the assembly. Now they understand that the assembly do not have the resources. To a large extent, they agree.
So this is also failure on the part of our local governance structure, you would say, right?
So,
and how do we fix that?
We need to get into serious decentralization. Unfortunately for us, we developed a very nice concept. Other countries who came to
But we already have the decentralization.
It is not in practice as we design it. we still have a lot of central government control. So we are talking of roads. Now, if you go to most of the assemblies, we have graders that were procured at the national level, graders that are not in good condition. They were more like clone ones. And for that matter, you see in many assemblies, just a matter of resurfacing the road, this assembly cannot do it. And they have to wait for central government to come and do that. So these are things that the local level administration could take into action by support from the central government. But central government seems to control much of the flow of resources. But another important
Which
thing
is a bad thing?
Is bad because it doesn't allow the assemblies to plan well. Because you plan without resources, you cannot implement. And when the local people get involved in the planning, and many assemblies will agree with me that yes, the communities are becoming discerning as I started, and now get involved in the planning. So it is not as in the past where they were not even much involved. Now they get involved. You come and say, okay, we need road, we need school here. And now that is what in their medium-term development plan. Now they see that also in their annual action plan. But at the end of the year, nothing happens. When they ask why common fund hasn't come, where is the common fund? It's the central government. Why it hasn't come, they cannot tell.
Really, the issue is also that within the election year, you see a lot of developments going on in other places. Roads are being fixed. I mean, fixing of roads are good, but if we look at the timing, a few months to elections, roads are being tarred all over the place, whilst other communities are bad road. My community has terrible roads, but nobody is demonstrating. So I'm asking this on the back of the fact that I want to believe that people who are demonstrating are seeing that other things are happening, other good things are happening in neighboring communities, which they feel they must also get.
Yeah, for sure, because as much as we all know, there are things that are misdirected. You succumb to pressure, and areas that did not deserve to be served first are being served. So what happens to the neighboring communities? If we know that we have been promised the last election, this election is coming, and the neighboring community was also promised, and now they have it. So what do we do?
But you don't see it as more like a bait or blackmail for those who are standing for elections?
I think it is not only that they blackmail, but the people need to be served. And if we really...
And so you don't think government should see it that way? They should see that, well, I mean, these demonstrations and petitions are because people deserve to be served.
I mean, common road to ply on should be a basic need. And for that matter, we are talking about farming communities. If you look at those in Kumbongo, these are farming communities. And for that matter, why should they suffer to get a simple graded road? And you see, the problem is that it's not that it's sometimes so expensive to do it, but because we have no coherent plans, at the end of the day, we neglect some areas without knowing that we have neglected them. So we need to really get together at the local level, to the district level, and to the national level. But unfortunately, the politician will always want to take a fast one.
If we look at these areas where these demonstrations are coming from, Hope, for example, the Volta regional capital, Kumbungo in the northern region, these are, I should say, strongholds of the ruling government. So do you see these demonstrations as an indictment on the government, or it's just, you would, I mean, as usual, say that the people deserve it, so just give it to them?
Oh yeah, for sure it is an indictment, because if these areas are noted to be the strongholds of the ruling government, and then the people voted for the ruling government because they expect that they will get something. So if they begin to demonstrate, definitely the governments to take a second look at it, because it will, it will be a signal to other people that no, even those who have been voting for you are not getting anything. So why should we also commit our vote to this particular government? So governments should definitely look at it as a negative, a pointer. And for that matter, should probably to do something about it. But by and large, we need to take some of these things into serious planning. We should not allow these knee-jerk actions to always control our way of doing things.
But in election year, you should expect that the government might feel threatened by these demonstrations and will go ahead and perhaps source funding just to keep the electoral base.
And that is why we end up spending more in the election year. And I think that is the most important and then the serious enemy to our development. If you look at the development curve, you realize that almost every year, election year, we spend so much. And then when we come back, we find it difficult to get our plans
together
and
and recover.
So we begin to suffer, and then another election year. So that cycle must.
So let me ask you,
must
what
stop.
can we do as a country to make sure that this cyclical blackmail, I will call it, cyclical demonstrations where people are demanding more during election year, what are the key things you would suggest that we do to stop it, so that at least we know that by the time election year is here, everybody understands that there's been some plan we have been working with, so you go to the people and account to the people according to the plan you gave them?
Yes, we need to let national level plans be known by the local level people, and for that matter through the decentralized system, so that people begin to understand that development, it is not a matter of going to fight for it, but as a father, that's the nation, will plan, and definitely the institutions and structures will take care of that. Even though people argue against the structuralist theories of development,
that's the way to go.
We need to allow the actors to also, use their human agency to play, but to a large extent, we need to let the structures work. In the institutions, for instance, the assemblies, if you plan very well with the assemblies and you get the local people involved, they would get to know the limit at which the assembly can do and what the central government can also do. So when you come to make a promise, you should be realistic. And this is a point that the politicians have to really understand and try to reduce the overly, reliance on false promise. You come and you promise things that you cannot do.
I like that, overly reliance on
yes.
false promise. You think that's a real problem?
That is a real problem. And because the people are now becoming aware of the fact that the politician is not that they are not capable of doing, but is because it's mismanagement. Because they see their lifestyle change automatically. And for that matter, where is the money? When you have it and we don't have it, where is it? So they begin to put pressure. And most often when they put pressure, they get returns.
And things happen.
So for that matter, they will always try to put that pressure.
Right. Mr. Mohammed, I'll have to wrap up with you. But before you go, these people who are demonstrating, they've done the right thing by going to present petition and all of that. What would be your advice to them that beyond election, how do you think communities should be conducting themselves to stay within the remit of government budget and also still get development for themselves without necessarily hitting the streets or protesting or stuff like that?
I think communities need to also get involved in the development agenda. Let's pay tax.
Pay tax.
We need to pay tax.
So if you don't pay tax, you have no basis to go on demonstrations to ask for roads.
You go around and you see that assemblies are not making any internal generated fund because the citizens are not paying tax. And local chiefs are not helping in some circumstances where people who are supposed to pay property tax are evading it. So we need to really get ourselves involved in the development agenda and demand realistically.
Right, Mr. Asa Mohammed, thanks very much. Mr. Asa Mohammed is a development expert and is also a lecturer at the University of Development Studies.